Muokasei nita. このエピソードでは JAXA と Super Kamiokande について話します。Japan del 2. Och här kommer vi att samla upp lite tidigare trådar. Plus att vi drar igång ett par nya. För i september 2023 så skickade JAXA upp sin månlandare Slim. Och i samband med det så släppte vi vårt första Japan-avsnitt.
Och för bara några avsnitt sen så pratade vi ju om månen och lite olika missioner och planer för den. Artemis, månbaser, robotar och sonder. Och nu är vi alltså tillbaka på månen och till Japan. För Slim har landat och vi har fått ett uppföljande samtal med JAXA om hur det gick. Men vi vill ju också passa på att berätta, för det är ju så coolt, att knappt hade månregoliten hunnit lägga sig efter Slimlandningen innan det var dags för nästa månprojekt att skickas iväg.
Ja, alldeles idag när vi spelar in det här, torsdagen den 15 februari 2024, så sköts månlandaren Nova C upp från det amerikanska bolaget Intuitive Machines från Kennedy Space Center. Landaren kommer, om allt går som det ska, att landa i närheten av månens sydpol den 22 februari. Och om man lyckas så blir man den första amerikanska farkosten att landa på månen på över 50 år. Och man blir också det första privata bolaget någonsin att landa på månen. Det blir mer om Nova C framöver.
Ja, men nu blir det Japan. Jag heter Marcus Pettersson.
Jag heter Susanna Levenhaupt.
Och du lyssnar på Har vi åkt till Mars än?
Ungefär 4 månader efter uppskjutningen så landade Slim på månen. Inte helt utan problem. Ett av munstyckena på raketmotorn ramlade av, vilket resulterade i att den blev lite svårstyrd och landade upp och ner. Vilket i sin tur resulterade i att solpanelerna för att ge den energi blev blockerade.
Men några dagar efter landningen så nådde ändå solen fram med några strålar och Slim kunde ladda tillräckligt för att skicka tillbaka data till jorden.
Masaki Fujimoto är Deputy Director General på JAXAs Institute of Space and Astronautical Science. Och av honom har vi fått en uppdatering om Slim.
The Slim was launched in September and it took like 4 months for it to get to the orbit around the moon because we wanted to save the fuel for inserting the Slim spacecraft into the orbit around the moon. It's a small spacecraft and our objective is to demonstrate the pinpoint landing technology. So SLIM stands for Smart Lander for Investigating the Moon. So it's really tech demo mission so that even a small resources enable a spacecraft to land smartly on the moon, pinpoint landing. So the landing campaign started around midnight, and then in 20 minutes everything was completed from 15 kilometer altitude down to the surface of the moon.
For the pinpointing, you were aiming to land in an area of 100 meters. How did that go?
Well, I think the way to describe the performance of the pinpoint landing technology is that the accuracy of pinpoint landing technology, accuracy of the location of the spacecraft relative to the target position was only 3 meters. But that was at the altitude of 50 meters. Given all that it took for the spacecraft to be there at the altitude of 50 meters, as close as 50 meters to the surface, 3-meter precision is the number we should refer to when it comes to the performance of the pinpoint landing. But the problem is that something wrong happened at the altitude of 50 meters when the spacecraft was hovering. And that's another story related to the success of Slim landing.
Yeah, so tell us more about that, because 3 meters is great even without a problem with the spacecraft.
I would call it amazing. So what happened? This performance assessment was made when Slim was hovering at 50-meter altitude. So at the first assessment, the precision was 3 meters. And then at the second assessment, it worsened to 10 meters because something wrong happened between the two. What happened is that one of the main thrusters lost its nozzle. We have confirmed this to be true because we do have the image of the surface and the nozzle is on the surface of the moon. So we lost one of the nozzles of the thruster, which means that we lost half of the thrusting force. So the SLIM spacecraft has to move into the contingency mode, doing its best to save the spacecraft upon landing, but it cannot control everything. So what happened is that even though we managed to reduce the descending speed so that we didn't have a big shock from the contact on the surface due to the vertical velocity, there was a horizontal velocity created because the thrust was in an unbalanced situation. And that horizontal velocity made the spacecraft to tumble over to have its final attitude on the surface to be in the wrong position. But still, it was a soft landing. Spacecraft managed to survive. And we did get all the data down after the landing. So that's why we now can tell what happened after 50 meters, or even the precision of pinpoint landing at the altitude of 50 meters.
So can you tell us more about what it was that went wrong?
We don't know. All we know is that one of the nozzles of one of the thrusters was detached from the spacecraft. That's what we know. We don't think we will blame it to the thruster itself. It could have been some chained process leading to that final phenomena. But we don't think that something wrong with the mechanical property of the nozzle itself that created the problem. But what is it's been I think this has been a great success. So we can now look back to what happened, and what I would call funny is that from all the telemetry data, we knew that what altitude the spacecraft was in after landing. But we have a beautiful image taken that clearly shows that what we inferred from the telemetry data to be correct. We have an image telling us in what altitude SLIM spacecraft is on the surface of the moon. And now you might be asking, who took the picture? Actually, it was two small robots that was deployed to the surface of the moon. And those two robots were fully autonomously active on the surface of the moon. And one of the small robots took the image of SLIM and sent the data to the other robot. And the other small robot relayed that image data to the ground, to Earth. And that's why we have a very nice image of the spacecraft, even though the spacecraft itself was in trouble, busy sending its own data. So I think there are stories to tell here. One is that, these days, small assets are really capable. They can play a critical role in a mission like this. And the other story is that why did the team retain the option of releasing two small robots, even in the contingency mode? I think the second question is really a good one. And by thinking through this question, I think there are so many lessons to learn if you're interested in space missions.
Okay, so you brought the robots with you. How big are they? Because it's a very small mission in itself.
True, it's very small. One of the small robot that took the image is only 250 grams. The other robot that relayed the data is only 2 kilograms. So it's only that tiny two robots that play the critical role, taking that image and sending the data to Earth, and convincing ourselves that SLIM's lander is really on the moon and really in the wrong altitude.
As you say, and as we can see in the pictures, it's not standing as it's supposed to.
True.
What does that mean for the mission?
So originally, if we didn't lose the nozzle of the thruster, what would have happened is that the spacecraft would have made another hovering at the altitude of around 2 meters. And then from there, it would have made a free fall to the surface with some specially controlled attitude, so that it would have made a two-stage landing. Two-stage landing is to land safely even on the slope region. But because it was in a contingency, that didn't happen. The thruster kept on thrusting, and there was no hovering at the altitude of 2 meters. And besides, because there was a horizontal velocity created because of this unbalanced thrusting situation, very likely, we don't know yet, we don't know the details, but very likely because of that horizontal velocity, which was not supposed in designing the mission, that must have given some force to the spacecraft. And finally, the spacecraft was like upside down at their final altitude.
Can you tell us more about the purpose of the mission?
I said it's a pinpoint landing mission. So what does it mean? SLIM is a very small spacecraft. It only has a limited resources. So it only had one camera, one spectroscopic camera. But even with that single camera, if you land next to a rock that you want to inspect, that you can do a great job. So the science of SLIM is that there's a region around the target landing spot, scattered rocks that seems to come from the deep interior of the moon. We are interested in the structure of the interior of the moon. So we want to inspect the rocks coming from deep interior of the moon precisely. So if you manage to land next to those rocks that stems from deep interior, you can do a spectroscopic observation. If you only have a simple camera, if you land close to it, that's possible. So that's the story. SLIM landed next to a rock that seems to have come from deep interior of the moon. And because we made a pinpoint landing right next to it, we managed to inspect the rocks precisely with a spectroscopic camera. So it was only single instrument. It was a single purpose mission. But because of the pinpoint landing technology, those science was enabled.
And how will the mission continue now after the success of the landing?
Yes, so it's a small mission, so we don't have that much resources. Even the plan was to make it survive only for several days. But what actually happened is that when it landed, because it was in the wrong altitude, it couldn't produce the power from the solar illumination. So it relied on the battery power. And during the period that battery power was available, it managed to downlink all the data about the engineering leading to the landing process. And then about 10 days later, the illumination condition got better and better, for which we waited. And then finally, we managed to operate the camera. So the spectroscopic camera did manage to inspect the rocks around the landing site. So that science mission is also completed. But then came the nighttime on the moon. And because we don't have the solar illumination anymore, the spacecraft stopped operating. So it's now in hibernation. Will it wake up when the solar illumination is recovered? That's a tough question because during the nighttime on the moon, the temperature gets very, very low. The SLIM is not designed to survive the nighttime of the moon. So we'll see if SLIM will wake up again or not, but there's no guarantee.
And now, how can you use the success of the mission and the pinpoint landing on future missions?
So I want to emphasize that it's not only pinpoint landing, but the fact that pinpoint landing was enabled by a small spacecraft, by a small resources. So nowadays we're talking about Artemis. And the core part of Artemis is the human mission, of course. But at the same time, Artemis should be about let's explore Moon and Mars together. And if you want more and more people to be a player, it's better that you make small missions to be more and more capable. So I think this is the way. By having those smaller missions to have this capability of pinpoint landing, you can design your mission more smartly. Those missions can visit the place you want to visit. And if we have many of those missions that's visiting your favorite spots, I think that's going to be a nice, that will play a nice synergy with bigger missions.
Let's look a bit forward. Last time we also spoke about the Martian moon mission MMX. Can you give us an update on that?
We have some issue with the launcher. The test flight of the new launcher had a failure. And because of this failure of the first test flight, there's a long queue for this new launcher now. And unfortunately, MMX has to be shifted by 2 years. So the launch of MMX is now 2026, not 2024. The team members are not just complaining, they are really making full use of the time available. And besides, in a sense, we can digest what happened with SLIM and then be ready for the launch of MMX. So, this 2 year shift is not that bad. That's the way I will take about this.
And okay, so finally, any other missions we can look forward to from JAXA?
We are thinking about what do we do beyond SLIM on the moon. The plan is to have a small rovers on the moon. Again, it has to be small because of the reason I mentioned. We really want to make a smart and useful small missions. And I think we can develop the technology so that Artemis will complete its mission. Like Artemis is not just about big mission, but it should be the synergy between big mission and small mission so that we can understand the moon better. And at the same time, after gaining those experiences on the surface of the moon, we do have a plan to land on Mars as well. But there, again and again, we are trying to have a line of small landing missions. And I think we do have a nice technology to enable that landing mission. So we do have a clear vision ahead of us. Landing on the moon, exploring the surface of the moon more, and then landing on Mars. But all of them with small and smart missions. Are you interested in astronomy mission as well?
Absolutely.
Oh, we just had the X-ray mission, CRISM. That's really a very nice mission. And then beyond CRISM, we are now trying to start even more complicated mission by the name Lightbird. And that will probe into the inflation universe, the very early part of the Big Bang. And it's a super complicated mission. But again, somebody like us, bold and ambitious or crazy, we'll try to do such a mission.
Ja, alltså så sjukt häftigt. Vi vill ha fler små, coola missioner till rymden inom kort.
Verkligen. Ja, de har så mycket häftigt på gång på JAXA. De här 2 astronomiska missionerna Masaki Fujimoto pratar om i slutet, CRISM och Lightbird, kommer vi att få komma tillbaka till senare. För nu måste vi gå vidare till en annan astronomiskt cool grej från Japan.
För vi var ju faktiskt där för inte allt för länge sedan. Och ett av besöken som lämnade djupa intryck var det på Super Kamiokande.
Ja, inte helt lätt att få huvudet runt vad som pågår där. Men så är det ju också Nobelprisnivå på forskningen som bedrivs där inne i berget utanför staden Toyama i västra Japan.
Nu snackar vi alltså om universums allra minsta beståndsdelar, neutriner. De uppstår vid olika typer av strålning och de sköljer över oss hela tiden. Och de är så små att de går rakt igenom vad som helst utan att det märks överhuvudtaget. Dig, mig, planeter. Och de är många. Man uppskattar att det på varje kvadratcentimeter passerar ungefär 100 miljarder neutriner per sekund. Så hur studerar man överhuvudtaget något som är så ofantligt litet?
Eller hur? Vi träffade Mr. Shigetaka Moriyama som var vänlig nog att ta oss på en rundtur och berätta mer om sitt arbete med neutrindetektion på Super Kamiokande.
My name is Shigetaka Moriyama and we are now sitting at the control room of Super Kamiokande detector, which is observing neutrinos and possibly some discovery of physics phenomena such as proton decay or something more interesting.
So just to start off, could you please describe the Super Kamiokande?
So this Super Kamiokande is sitting underground, 1,000 meters below the mountain. So from above, so we have, 1,000 meter thickness of mountain we have. Then we have 40 meter diameter and 40 meter height cavern. And inside that cavern, we have a stainless liner, which consists of, cylinder shape can. Then inside of that can, we have some structure which is holding 11,000 of phototubes looking inside of that water tank and 1,700 smaller photosensors looking outside, which is used for identifying incoming charged particles such as muons as a background.
And then it's filled with water.
And it's filled with water, pure water.
1 kilometer ner i berget, har man alltså byggt en konstruktion som består av en 40 gånger 40 meter stor cylinder i stål. Längs insidan av den här cylindern så sitter det 11 000 fotosensorer och på utsidan så sitter det ytterligare 1700 mindre fotosensorer. Ja, det ser ut ungefär som att stora glödlampor täcker insidan av en jättestor cistern. Och så är hela den här konstruktionen fylld med renat vatten. 50 000 ton vatten. Det finns bilder på vår hemsida så ni också kan se hur det ser ut, för det är verkligen spektakulärt. Men tillbaka till Mr. Moriyama. För vad är det egentligen som händer där inne?
Okay, so when neutrino comes in, then some molecule contains the nucleon or quarks electrons. So the neutrino can interact those electrons or quarks, then that produce charged particle, and that charged particle produce Cherenkov light. Then those Cherenkov light goes through the water, and finally they reach to the photosensor surrounding.
So what you're measuring is actually light. It's not the particles itself.
Exactly. So by looking at those Cherenkov light, we can reconstruct the neutrinos incoming. So that is a essential important point, which is the which physicists can working on.
Ja, trots att Super Kamiokanden ligger djupt nere i berget så kommer alltså mängder med neutriner in i tanken hela tiden, från alla håll. Och det är ju inte bara för att det är så himla coolt att bygga en high-tech-anläggning en kilometer ner under ett berg som man har valt just den platsen. Utan det är också för att filtrera bort all annan strålning och partiklar som faktiskt inte tar sig igenom alla de här lagren av sten och stål.
Och väl inne i tanken så färdas neutrinerna genom det extremt rena vattnet och ibland kolliderar de med någon elektron eller en kvark eller något annat pyttelitet. Problemet är bara att det inte händer så ofta. För trots att det som sagt passerar 100 miljarder neutriner per kvadratcentimeter per sekund så kolliderar de med något jättesällan. Typ 30 krockar per dag. De flesta går liksom bara rakt igenom atomerna och missar kärnan och elektroner och allt annat. De fortsätter rakt genom detektorn, rakt genom jorden och försvinner ut i universum igen i nära ljusets hastighet.
Men när någon av dem träffar något inuti Super Kamiokanden, då uppstår det magi. Eller i alla fall energi. I form av något som kallas Cherenkov-ljus. Vilket kan sägas vara den optiska motsvarigheten till en sonic boom.
Så genom att de här 11 000 fotosensorerna observerar ljuset som bildas när en enstaka neutrin kolliderar med något i vattnet så kan man alltså få reda på en hel massa information om de här små gynnarna. Bland annat har man kunnat observera att neutriner inte är masslösa, vilket var en revolutionerande upptäckt som genererade ett Nobelpris 2015.
Neutrinos coming from below actually need to travel 13,000 kilometers. So during the travel, they can change their property to some other species of neutrinos. So that is a discovery which we made many years ago. That tells us that the neutrinos have mass, which was not known before.
And what does that mean for our world view? Because first we thought that they did not have mass, and now we know that they have mass.
So first of all, our understanding of particles are, so-called standard model of particles. But in that standard model of particles, we assume zero mass of neutrinos. And along that context, the model is constructed. But since we have found that neutrinos have mass, that means our standard model is not correct. And since we are looking for any physics beyond the standard model, so that is a very important point, and which can be a sort of breakthrough of our research.
Det handlar alltså om att hela tiden testa de rådande teorierna och standardmodeller vi har inom fysiken. Och då hittar man avvikelser som gör att vi får skriva om verkligheten på olika sätt.
Och den här gången ansågs alltså upptäckten så viktig att den belönades med Nobelpriset i fysik 2015 som mottogs av Takaaki Kajita. Och då var det alltså inte första gången Super Kamiokande stod för ett prisbelönat genombrott. 2002 tilldelades Masatoshi Koshiba samma pris för den första observationen av neutriner från en supernova. Så nu undrar man såklart, vad siktar man på härnäst?
And you already got 2 Nobel Prizes for your work here. What will the third Nobel Prize be about?
Yeah, I hope that kind of CP observation in this so-called lepton sector related to electron or muons, those discovery we are expecting. And of course, we always thinking about the proton decay. That is, really our dream. That's of course lead another Nobel Prize.
What would that discovery mean?
So the nucleon decay or proton decay means our universe finally sort of disappear for a long time. So that means that our body consists of proton, neutron, and electron. So if we observe nucleon can decay, then finally everything can disappear, and our body also disappear. So this is the implication of this observation.
Protonsönderfall alltså. Det låter ju extremt dramatiskt. Att världen liksom faller samman, löses upp och försvinner. Men man ska veta att tidsramarna för de här teorierna är så oändligt långa att det inte ens går att säga ett antal år, för det är för många nollor i siffran.
Men visst är det coolt att tänka på att Mr. Moriyama och hans kollegor, de sitter där nere under berget utanför Toyama och forskar på de här sakerna. Vi hoppas såklart att vi får anledning att återkomma till Super Kamiokande och se vad som händer där framöver. Eller kanske till och med till den nya Hyper Kamiokande som väntas vara klar 2027. För eftersom neutrinerna är så små och de krockar med något så ofantligt sällan, då behöver man bygga något som är större för att kunna observera fler. Så Hyper Kamiokande blir ungefär 5 gånger större. Det är ni! Ja, som vanligt är Japan supercoolt. Och liksom, varför ska man nöja sig med en Super Kamiokande när man kan bygga en Hyper Kamiokande? Så otroligt rimligt. Gå in på harviåktimarsen.se, där hittar ni massor med bilder från vårt besök.
Och vad gäller JAXA och Slim och de där, borde inte Kiruna med S-Range och IRF kunna ge oss lite liknande projekt i framtiden? Skicka små forskningssonder med egna raketer till månar och asteroider. Vi får dra dit och höra efter tycker jag. Kommer snart i din favoritpodd.
Och vill du höra mer om neutriner så pratar vi om det med professor Ulf Danielsson i avsnitt 33 då vi pratar om mörk materia. Och det kommer ju komma ännu mer om detta framöver. Men nu så är det tack för idag. Musiken i serien är skriven av Armin Pendek.
Jag heter Susanna Levenhaupt.
Jag heter Marcus Pettersson.
Har vi åkt till Marsen görs på Beppo av Rundfunk Media i samarbete med Saab.
Hallå? Programmet gjordes av Rundfunk Media.